Everyone thought I was dying. The truth was, I was the only one who wasn't. My sister had cancer, but my family believed I was the one on my deathbed. No one realized the hospital had mixed up our test results, and once I discovered the truth, I stayed silent and watched them reveal exactly who they were. It started when I went to the hospital for a routine checkup, and was told I had late-stage liver cancer. I was 21. I remember staring at the doctor, unable to hear anything else he said. By the time I got home, my legs gave out. I cried for 3 days straight. My father cut fruit and left it by my bed. My sister cooked every meal herself. My mother burned incense and prayed for protection charms. They told me we would get through this together, no matter the cost. A week later, I returned to the hospital for follow-up tests. The doctor looked uncomfortable. He checked the file again and apologized. There had been a mistake. The report with the cancer diagnosis wasn't mine. It belonged to my sister. Our names were nearly identical, we looked alike, and the paperwork had been switched. I walked out of the hospital feeling lightheaded, relief and horror tangled together. I wasn't dying, but my sister was. I didn't know how to tell my parents. I lay on my bed staring at the ceiling, rehearsing words I couldn't say. That evening, I heard the front door open. I almost called out, but then I heard voices that froze me in place. My father sounded excited. He was talking to my sister about the apartment building my grandmother had left in my name. He said the rent alone brought in $200,000 a month, and once I died, the building would be hers. My sister didn't hesitate. She said she hoped I would die quickly. Pretending to care for me every day was exhausting. My mother comforted her, telling her to keep playing the part. As long as I believed they loved me, I would eventually hand over the property. My chest felt tight, like all the air had been squeezed out. That building was the only thing my grandmother had left me. When I was 5 years old, I was kidnapped while walking with my grandmother at a market. I wasn't found until I was 15. To make up for it, she transferred a building my grandfather had owned into my name. She donated the rent money to a charity that helped families search for missing children and planned to give me full access after I graduated college. Instead of gratitude, that gift became the reason my parents and sister resented me. After I was found, my parents barely looked at me. The best food always went to my sister. If there were dumplings, she got the meat while I ate the wrappers. I was beaten for the smallest mistakes. My sister stole money my grandmother gave me and blamed me for it. I thought their sudden kindness meant they had changed. I was wrong. They were just waiting for me to die. I stepped into the living room. The smell of fried food filled the air. My mother acted surprised to see me awake and proudly pointed at the table. Fried chicken. Fries. Seafood. My sister smiled sweetly and held a fry to my mouth, telling me to eat so I could recover. My father laughed and said my sister had insisted on cooking crabs for me. He joked that he only got to eat them because of my illness. Anyone with liver cancer knows greasy food and seafood are dangerous. They weren't trying to help me live. They were trying to speed things up. I smiled, opened my mouth and ate the fry. I praised the taste and sat down, eating with enthusiasm. I even fed my sister bite after bite. She forced a smile and played along. Less than an hour later, she was vomiting in the bathroom. My parents rushed to her side, whispering that it didn't make sense. Why was I fine while she was sick? My sister brushed it off, saying she'd been dieting. She was confident I was the one with cancer. She wanted me dead. That night, I asked to sell the building to pay for surgery. Panic filled the room. They begged me not to sell. The market was bad, they said. If I needed money, they would help. I acted hesitant, guilty. Within minutes, they scraped together $100,000 for my treatment. When the transfer notification came through, I almost laughed. My sister was dying, and I was getting rich. The next morning, I raised the stakes. I sighed over breakfast and said chemotherapy would cost much more. I suggested selling the building again. They panicked and promised to find the money. When I said $400,000, my sister finally lost control and accused the hospital of scamming us. My parents sold their cars and handed me the cash. That night, I overheard them arguing in their bedroom. My sister screamed that she was the real princess of the family. My parents told her to endure it for the building. Then my father said something that made my blood run cold. He admitted that when I was a child, they had arranged for me to be taken away because my sister said she didn't like me. In that moment, something inside me broke and something else took its place. I stopped wanting their love. I wanted justice. After that night, something inside me went completely cold. I no longer cared whether they loved me or not. I stopped hoping they might feel guilt. Instead, I decided to become exactly what they wanted me to be, a terminally ill daughter who was easy to manipulate, expensive to keep alive, and slowly draining them dry. I ordered the palest foundation I could find, and watched tutorials on how to make myself look sick. I darkened my eyes, dulled my lips, and practiced looking weak in the mirror. I stopped showering regularly, wore loose, worn-out clothes, and sighed heavily whenever I walked past them. I made sure every step looked tiring, every breath looked hard-earned. My parents and sister became overly attentive. They spoke softly, asked how I felt, and hovered around me, but their eyes betrayed them. They weren't afraid of losing me. They were waiting. They asked about my treatment every day, but what they really wanted to know was how much longer they had to pretend. I complained about nausea and fatigue, and they nodded with thinly veiled satisfaction. When I said chemotherapy was making my hair fall out, I pulled loose strands out in front of my sister. She told me not to worry, that I would definitely survive, but her smile was too bright, too eager. About a month later, I announced I was stopping treatment. I said the doctor had told me there was no point anymore, that I had maybe 3 months left at most. I watched their reactions carefully. No one cried. My mother sighed like she had been expecting it. My father looked away. My sister's lips twitched, as if she was trying not to smile. Then I casually added that before I died, I wanted to transfer my grandmother's building to my mother. The room went completely silent. You could hear the clock ticking. My sister was the first to react. She grabbed my arm, her fingers digging into my skin, and asked why I wouldn't give it to her after everything she had done for me. My father snapped that giving it to my mother made no sense and suggested I give it to him instead. My mother, who had been quiet, suddenly straightened up, her face flashing with greed she couldn't hide. Within seconds they turned on each other. My father accused my mother of wanting to hoard the rent money. My mother screamed that he would gamble it all away just like everything else in his life. Old resentments poured out. Chairs scraped against the floor. Voices rose higher and higher. My sister stood there shaking, her face red with anger, then suddenly switched expressions. She turned to me with a gentle smile and asked what I wanted for dinner, as if nothing had happened. I almost laughed at how fast she changed her mask. I decided to push further. I named an expensive traditional dish that took an entire day to prepare, something she had never cooked before. Her face stiffened, but she didn't dare refuse. That night, she stayed in the kitchen for hours. From then on, she became my personal chef. Every day, I asked for something new. Rare ingredients. Complicated recipes. Over 200 dishes in 1 month. She barely slept. My mother refused to lose this competition. She took me shopping almost every day, dragging me through malls and boutiques. She bought me clothes, jewelry, shoes, anything I touched. When I sighed and said I was afraid I wouldn't live long enough to enjoy the designer bags I liked, she clenched her teeth and took out loans to buy them for me. Every purchase came with the same question, asked carefully, anxiously, when would I transfer the building? My father chose a different approach. One afternoon, he took me to a hillside cemetery and proudly showed me a burial plot. He said he had consulted masters and feng shui experts and found a place that would guarantee me comfort in the afterlife. I smiled politely and told him I preferred a plot farther away, one said to guarantee rebirth into wealth. I said it was more expensive but worth it. He hesitated only briefly before mortgaging the house. When the money hit my account, I realized they were drowning in debt and still willing to sink deeper. Late one night, I heard shouting again. This time, they weren't even trying to hide it. They talked openly about poisoning my food, about making things end faster so they wouldn't have to spend any more money. My sister was told to keep cooking heavy, greasy meals and to start serving alcohol. The next day, she brought out barbecue and high-proof liquor and urged me to drink. I pretended to hesitate and told her to drink first. She laughed and took several big gulps. Minutes later, she ran to the bathroom, shaking and pale. I took small sips, just enough to make my throat burn, just enough to look convincing. Every meal meant to kill me was slowly destroying her instead. She began complaining about stomach pain, bloating, and constant diarrhea. She wanted to see a doctor. I smiled and told her, you have always been so healthy, unlike me. You are just tired from taking care of me. I begged her to stay and eat with me, saying I wouldn't be around much longer. She stayed. Weeks turned into months. Debt collectors started calling the house. My parents became restless. They watched me closely, confused by how healthy I looked. One evening, as I ate lamb chops with a healthy appetite, my mother asked why I looked better instead of worse. I asked her if she wanted me dead sooner. She laughed nervously and said of course not. That was when the front door flew open. My sister stumbled inside, crying hysterically. She collapsed into my mother's arms and said the doctor had diagnosed her with liver cancer. My parents were stunned. They asked if it was hereditary. It wasn't. She begged them for money. Slowly, their eyes turned toward me. I said I didn't have any. All my treatment money had come from them. When I realized my voice sounded too strong, I coughed and pretended to be weak. They told me to ask my grandmother for help. I nodded. But when I sat in front of my grandmother and told her everything, she didn't scold me. She listened quietly, then laughed bitterly. She said my parents deserved everything that was happening, and that my sister's illness was karma. She told me I had done well and promised to stand by me. When I returned home, I told my family my grandmother refused to help and planned to sell the building and donate the money. They exploded, cursing her for half an hour. Then my father claimed the building was already mine and told me to collect rent directly. That was when I told them the truth. The building had never been transferred to me. Their love disappeared in an instant. My father shoved me. My mother called me useless. My sister screamed that she had wasted all her effort on nothing. They beat me until a neighbor intervened and threw me out. As I sat in the hallway in my slippers, listening to them curse me through the door, I finally understood something clearly. To them, I had never been family. I had only been an investment. A few days later, my grandmother's 80th birthday banquet arrived. It was held in a grand hotel ballroom, filled with round tables, red tablecloths, and the low hum of relatives chatting. I arrived with my grandmother, dressed neatly and walking calmly at her side. Anyone who didn't know the story would have thought we were a perfectly loving pair. Inside, I felt steady. I had already lost everything that mattered to me, so there was nothing left to fear. My parents arrived not long after. They carried expensive health supplements and wore faces full of forced concern. The moment they spotted my grandmother, they hurried over, speaking loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. They said their daughter was dying, that treatment cost millions, and that no matter what had happened in the past, family should come first. My grandmother didn't even turn her head. She simply raised a hand and called my name. I walked over and naturally began massaging her shoulders, just like I always did. The room seemed to quiet around us. My parents froze, staring as if they'd seen a ghost. My father asked why I was still here, why I looked so close to her when I had supposedly been abandoned. I answered calmly that after they threw me out, my grandmother felt sorry for me and brought me home. I thanked them openly for helping me learn who my real family was. Their faces drained of color. Then, in the most casual tone I could manage, I told them my grandmother had already transferred the building to me. This time, I didn't just say I took the deed out of my bag and placed it on the table. The shift was immediate. My mother grabbed my hand and said I looked thin and tired, that I should come home and rest. My father promised to find the best doctors, to take me anywhere I wanted for treatment. Their voices shook with desperation. I pulled my hand away and told them I didn't need parents who only remembered me when money was involved. I said I had my grandmother now, and that was enough. My mother's lips trembled, but she didn't dare curse me in front of everyone. Before the situation could settle, chaos erupted. My sister appeared from the crowd, her face sunken, her body thin to the point of looking fragile. In her hand was a knife. She pointed it at me and screamed that I wasn't sick at all. She accused me of knowing the truth from the beginning, and deliberately letting her believe I was the one dying. My parents tried to calm her at first, telling her she was confused, until she shoved the corrected medical report into their hands. The moment they read it, their expressions twisted with rage. They lunged toward me, shouting that I was heartless, and that I had tried to kill my own sister. I ran, weaving between tables as they chased me. Chairs toppled. Guests screamed. When they were too out of breath to continue, I climbed onto a table and faced everyone. I admitted everything. I said I had taken their money. I said I had delayed my sister's treatment on purpose. Then I asked them, loudly, whether that was worse than selling their own daughter to traffickers when she was 10 years old. The ballroom fell silent. Relatives stared at my parents in horror. Whispers spread like wildfire. Some people began shouting at them, calling them cruel and inhuman. My father tried to rush me again but was held back. They demanded their money back. I told them to consider it payment for my stolen childhood. My sister screamed and charged at me with the knife. I dodged, but the blade cut my cheek. Blood ran down my face. My grandmother cried out, but I told her I was fine and calmly dialed the police. When the police arrived, my sister was still threatening me. She was disarmed and taken away, still shouting that she would kill me. My parents cursed her for making things worse when they were already broke. They didn't try to protect her at all. After that day, their lives unraveled quickly. To pay off debts, they sold their house and moved into a cramped, run-down apartment. They fought constantly and eventually divorced. Both of them came to my grandmother's home more than once, begging for money and calling me ungrateful. I never opened the door. My father became a security guard. My mother worked as a cleaner. They aged years in a short time. My sister survived for a while. She came often, kneeling in front of my grandmother and begging for treatment money. My grandmother always pointed to me and said the decision was mine. I refused every time. I reminded my sister of the scar on my face and told her I didn't need a sister who had tried to kill me. I even cooked for her the same kinds of rich dishes she once forced on me and told her to eat if she wanted to live. She never touched the food. Eventually, she stopped coming. I heard later that she tried to make money online, then relied on wealthy men, but was abandoned when her illness worsened. I didn't see her again until I heard she had died. After graduation, my grandmother placed the keys to the building in my hand. I became a landlord, financially secure and finally free. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting to be loved. I was living on my own terms.